Hi, my name is Akankshya Upadhyay and I am your English instructor. In today's class, we will be learning about how to use prepositions in an effective way. This is in the grammar portion of our second unit. So let's begin. So today we will be looking at the use of prepositions. First, we will look at how to use the preposition at. So, at can be used to talk about a specific point or a place. At is used while talking about a specific point, a specific place, or a specific time. So, for the specific point, we can say, he is at the top of the staircase. Or we can say, he is at the bottom of the staircase. So let's imagine if this is a staircase and a person is standing here, we can say he is at the bottom of the staircase. And if the person stands here, we can say he is at the top of the staircase. Now for a specific place, we can say she is So we can say she is at the window or she is at the door. She is at the end of the street. We can also use at to talk about specific time. We can say at 3 o'clock. I'll be there at 3 o'clock. Or she will be home at noon. So this is a specific time, specific a point of a day, noon. So she'll be there at home. The other way to use at is when we talk about an exact address. So we can say he lives at Panitanki. So there is a place in Mahankal which is known as Panitanki, and that is an exact address because you know where the Panitanki is. So he lives at Panitanki means you're giving an exact address about that person. He lives at Panitanki, not at Mahankal, not at Chavil, but at Panitanki. When we talk about events, we use at. For example, I met him at a party. She saw me at a conference. We can say we met at a meeting. So these are specific events at a party, at a conference, at a meeting. We also use at to talk about buildings where event happen or activity takes place. For example, she was dancing. She was dancing at the cinema theater. Or he was studying at the library. So these are the buildings or actual places where events happen or activity take place. We can use at while talking about somebody's house. So we can say, example, he is at Rita's house. He is at Rita's house. We can also say, she lives at her aunt's house. We use at when we talk about a stop on a journey. For example, to talk about a stop on a journey. For example, the bus stops at bus park. Or We stopped at the nearby school. Also, they can be used for some standard. At can be used for some standard expression. For example, I am at home or I am at work. Notice that we do not use the while using the regular descriptions. So home, work, you're at work or you're at home, you're giving the regular description. And we never say, I am at the work or I am at the temple, because these are the general rule says that the general description is never attached with the. We do not use the while we use these standard expressions. Now next we have on. So we use on to talk about a surface. For example, the clock is on the wall. So if this is a wall and here is a clock, so we can say that the clock is on the wall. We can say, suppose this is a table and here is the phone. We can say the phone is on the table because it's on the surface. So what do we understand by these examples? If anything is on a surface, we use the preposition on. So next is if something is attached to something else. So if two things are attached, for example, she is wearing a ring on her finger. So let's imagine this is a person's hand and this is a ring. We can see that the ring is attached to the hand, to the finger. So we can say she is wearing a ring on her finger. Another example, there are mangoes on the tree. So we can say that mangoes are attached with trees. So we can say there are mangoes on the tree. Another important use of on is when we use days or dates. For example, let's meet on Sunday. I have a conference on the 29th of June. There is a grand event on Children's Day. So these are the specific days or dates. Children's Day, 29th of June or Sunday. So we use on. We can use on birthdays as well. So another use of on while talking about river or roads. For example, he lives on Mahakali River. Now it does not mean that he lives on Mahakali River, he swims inside the river or anything like that. It just means that he lives on Mahakali River, which is very near. His place is near to Mahakali River. Or he lives on Lakshmi Toll. Now for standard expressions, we can use on. For example, on a farm. I saw him on a farm. For giving directions like go on the left side of the road or right side of the road. We can also say he lives on the ground floor or he lives on the second floor. I heard him on the radio. I saw him on the TV. We met on a ship. Now we will look at the use of in. We can use in with months or years or centuries or a long period of time. So for example, we met in May. I remember your son. We met in 2010. It was recognized in 3rd century. I heard it was discovered in the Ice Age. So notice that we've used month with in, we've used a specific year within, we've used century within, and we've also described a very long period of time within. Other way can be used to describe about an enclosed space. It is used to describe about an enclosed space or a large place with boundaries. For example, the keys are in the bag. So this is an enclosed space. She is sleeping in her bedroom. She is sleeping in her bedroom. We can use in with forest or garden or car park even. He has parked his car in the car park means a large place with boundaries. We are talking about the enclosed spaces. We can use in while talking about a town or a city. For example, he lives in Kathmandu. He lives in Kathmandu. My sister is in Taplejung, or they are in Pokhara. Now let's see the use of in with some standard expression. I read an article in the newspaper. I read an article in the newspaper. Or we can say, she is admitted in the hospital. She is admitted in the hospital. We can say, the aeroplane is in the sky. We can also use in with photographs. My parents are in the photograph. Now let's see the use of with. This is another preposition which is very common. With is used to indicate of being together. Indicate together. For example, I ordered pizza with a drink. So your pizza and your drink are together. They're being together. We can say, I was with my sister last morning. So last morning, me and my sister, we were together. We can also use with to indicate having something. You can have a quality. For example, I saw a girl with black hair. So here, a girl has a black hair, a quality that a person possesses. A girl possesses black hair. We can also use with to indicate that you're using something. For example, I wrote a letter with blue ink. So basically, you're writing a letter with blue ink. You're using something. Another example is you can also say, I made this tea with water, milk, sugar, and tea leaves. So you're using so many things to make a tea. So you use with because you're using water, milk, sugar, and tea leaves. With is also used to indicate feelings. You can say he walked on the stage with confidence. So that's a feeling. Also, another example could be students emailed their teacher with sincere apology. So sincerely apologizing is the feeling. You're indicating your feeling. Now let's see the use of over, which is another important preposition we have been listed. So over is used to indicate movements. For example, come over my house for dinner sometime. You're moving from your place to your friend's house for dinner. Come over for my house for dinner sometime. This indicates movement. This requires movement because you need to go from one place to another for dinner. Another example, they sent over gift for Bhaitika. So you're sending a gift. Here, a gift requires movement from one place to another place. You're sending your brother. Sisters are sending their brother a gift for Bhaitika. Now, another sentence to be used with over can be to indicate a movement that's going downwards or indicate downward movement. For example, the big tree fell over the path. So a tree is falling over. That means it needs a downward movement, because to fall you cannot fall upward, instead you need to fall downwards. So downward movement we use over. Another example, can you bend over and touch your toe? So can you bend over and touch your toe? Of course, you're touching your toe with your hand. So you need to bend downwards to touch your toe. Over can also be used to indicate something that happened to be more than you expected. To indicate more than expected. For example, the phone rang for over a minute. That means your phone was not supposed to ring for over a minute, but it did. So it happened more than you expected. The teacher took the class over an hour. Your teacher was supposed to take a class for 15 minutes, but she took a class for more than an hour. And that is the reason you are saying that it was not expected, because she was supposed to teach you for 15 minutes, but it has already been an hour and more than an hour. So you say the teacher took the class over an hour. Also, we use over to indicate a period of time. So we can say, I worked there over 5 years. Also, we can say, I am thinking about this issue over a month. That is, you're telling about a point of time, a period of time. Now we will look at the examples. We will look at how to use by, the preposition by. By is used to indicate closeness. For example, can I sit by you? So you're trying to be close, you're trying to go close to the other person. The office is by the bank. So you're saying that the office is very close to the bank. So the office is by the bank. We can also use by when we use the passive voice in any sentence. For example, the lock was repaired by the mechanic. So the active voice for this sentence is The mechanic repaired the lock. But because we're using the passive voice, the lock was repaired, we use by the mechanic. We can also use by with actions having purpose. For example, so here you can pass the exam by studying hard. So to pass the exam is your purpose, and studying hard is the action to meet your purpose. So you can pass the exam by studying hard. If you study hard, that is, if you perform an action, you will be closer to your purpose. You can pass the exam. Another example, I express my feelings by writing letter. So here, to express the feeling is your purpose. The main thing that you need to do is express your feelings. And how do you do that? The action item requires or includes writing. So writing is an action and expressing your feeling is a purpose. We can also use by while describing about a method. For example, you can say, please forward the mail by Gmail. So you're basically saying use Gmail to forward your mail. Please don't use Hotmail. Don't use any other emails. Don't use any other mails, but use Gmail. Another example is, I came here by bus. So by bus is a method that you applied to come to a place. So I came here by bus. Now we will go through the preposition to and towards. First, we will look at the use of to. To indicates movement with the aim of a specific destination. The first way to use to is to indicate movement with the aim of a specific destination. Like I'm traveling to Kathmandu tomorrow. Kathmandu is your specific destination. I need to go to the bank. So the bank is your specific destination. What time did you go to work? So this is again, going to work is your specific destination. So you need to keep this in mind that you use to while you're talking about a specific destination. We also use to indicate movement of a person. For example, he came up to me and asked what the time was. So a movement of a person from one place to where I am standing just to ask the time is used with to. To is also used to indicate specific position. For example, there is a door to your left. So this is a specific position. To your left, there is a door. He stood with his back to the window. Now we'll go with towards. Towards indicate movement in a particular direction. For example, she was walking towards the door, or she was walking towards her mom. So this is a particular direction. He kicked the football towards the goal post. So this is again a specific direction towards the goal post. Now let's see a pair of examples. Here are two examples. I'm going to Lakshmi Toll and I think we're heading towards Lakshmi Toll now. We must have gone wrong. So what is the difference between these two sentences? In the first example, that is, I'm going to Lakshmi Toll, it indicates a destination, a specific destination, that you're heading towards Lakshmi Toll. You're going to Lakshmi Toll. In the second example, the direction of movement is more important than the destination. So here, you go looking for Lakshmi Toll and you are in a wrong way, you go looking for another street. The most important thing in the second example should be the movement from one place to another rather than the destination. So you think that you're heading towards Lakshmi Toll now. You needed to go to Laure Toll, but you are going towards the Lakshmi Toll and you say that we must have gone wrong because you're going to a wrong direction. You're talking about direction here, not destination. Now we will look at the use of through. So for through suggests movement across an entire space from one side of something to another. So movement across an entire space from one side of something to another. For example, he cut through the wire. Also, it can be used to denote the movement within Also, it can be expressed for movements within a space which can be thought of as 3D, three-dimensional. For example, she couldn't get the new sofa through the door. Another example, you won't see them unless you use binoculars. Now we move towards into. Into refers to movement from outside to inside of a 3D space. So movement from outside to inside. For example, we got into the bus. So you're going from a playground to the bus, into the bus. You're going inside from outside. Another example is she reached into her bag and found the keys. So she put her hand inside the bag and found her keys. So it's involving a movement from outside to inside a bag. Also, we can use into to express the idea of movement in direction of something, often resulting in actually witnessing it. Like you can use into while moving in direction of something. For example, he crashed into the window. You can also say she looked straight into her eyes. Now, we will go through the prepositions across, along, and over. So, across and over are used to talk about movement from one side of the place to another. So, to talk about movement from one side of the road to the other. For example, I jumped over the wall. Now suppose this is a wall and here is the house and I am standing here, and that means I jumped over the wall and went to the house. I jumped over the wall. Another example, the helicopter flew over the river. Now this is a river and here is an aeroplane and that flew over the river. So the helicopter or the aeroplane flew over the river. That means passing over something, above something. Now, along is used to show movement following a line. So, movement following a line. For example, we walked along the river. Now, if this is a river and here is the bank, we are walking. So, this is walking along the river. Another example, I followed Dr. Mishra. I followed Dr. Mishra along the corridor. So if this is a corridor and here stands Dr. Mishra, I am following Dr. Mishra. So I am going along a straight line. We can also have another example. There are plenty of restaurants along the river. Now, we will look at the use of round. So when do we use round? We can use round when we talk about something in a circle. So we can say, the earth moves round the sun. XYZ is the first woman to travel round the world. We can also use round to denote that somebody or something is being surrounded or surrounding somebody or something. For example, she put her arms round her daughter, or he had a scarf round his neck. We can also use round to express parts of something. For example, she searched her bag round the room. This means she's looking for her bag and she looked at every part of the room. So every part of something, part of the room. Now we will look at the use of under. Under is used to express through a position that is below something. For example, she opened her shoes. She opened her shoes under the window. Or you can also say, I found my lost key. It was under the bed. If this is a bed, the key was under the bed. Or if this is a window, the shoes was under the window. We can also use under to express that something is less than something or something is younger. For example, it took us less than an hour. If you need to say that if a work took you to be done less than an hour, you can rephrase it to it took us under an hour. So it means that it did not take even 1 hour, it was less than an hour. You can also have another example. Nobody under 18 can smoke. So you can say anyone younger than 18 cannot smoke. Or also you can use under to express something that's according to an agreement. To express something is according to an agreement, a law, or a system. For example, a man was detained under the mental health law. A man was detained under the Mental Health Act. You can also use under to express that you're experiencing a particular process. For example, you can say, the restaurant is under construction. You can also use under to express particular part of a book list. For example, you can say, if the content is not under games, try looking under sports. If the content is not under games, try looking under sports. Next, we will be looking at the use of between. Between is used to express in or into the space separating two or more points, objects, or people. So to separate two or more points, objects, or people. For example, R comes between Q and S. I sat down between Prabhigya and Priyata. I sat down between Prabhigya and Priyata. You can also use between in the period of time that separates 2 days, years, events, etc. for separating 2 years or days or events. For example, it's cheaper between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. We can also use between to mention about traveling from one place to another. For example, we can say, we fly between Pokhara and Kathmandu once in 2 days. We can also use between to express something that is shared by 2 or more people or things. Shared by 2 or more people or things. For example, we ate a momo between us. Now, we will be looking at the use of off. Off is usually expressed to meanings with down or away from a place or a distance at a particular time. For example, she fell off the ladder, or let's keep off the grass. We can also use off while leading away from something. For example, a road or a room. So leading away for something. For example, there is a bathroom of the bedroom. We can also use off to state that somebody is on a leave. We can say, for example, he has had 2 days of school. So this is the use of prepositions, the explanation for use of prepositions. Now, I will leave you with a homework. So these are the questions. With the prepositions that we learned in today's class, you need to fill in the blanks for your homework. So this is all for today's class. If you have any questions, suggestions, any comments, please feel free to write to us at learning@deerwalk.edu.np. Thanks for watching.